All right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. I'm Dana Childress. I work with the Partnership for People with Disabilities at VCU. I'm one of our early intervention professional development consultants, and I'm going to walk you through our resource pop-up webinar today. I'm going to let Corey say hi really quick. She's joining me, and then we'll get started.
Good morning, everybody. I am Corey Hill. I work with Dana, as she said, at the Partnership, and I'm the Early Intervention Professional Development Specialist.
Thank you, Corey. Well, as folks are starting to come in, I say we go ahead and get going because we only have about 30 minutes to get started. Hi, Lori. I see your video on. It's nice to see a familiar face. So welcome to our resource pop-up. I think this is the first one for this year. I think so. Today, what we're going to talk about is staff development on transition. So as you guys know, transition is a daunting task for service coordinators especially, but service providers as well. So what we're going to do is spend the next 30 minutes talking about the new transition learning path, as well as putting it in the context of a staff development plan so that you can support your staff and try, use the resources that are out there to help build their skills. Let's see. So let's go ahead and start. Let's get moving. So I know you guys are probably very familiar, maybe even more familiar than you want to be with Zoom, but I wanted to let you know, just like typically with Zoom, you can hover your cursor at the bottom of your screen to access this toolbar. The main thing we'll use here is chat. So feel free to use chat to ask questions, to pop ideas in the chat, anything that you want, that's there for you. I'll ask you some questions, so we'll have a little conversation as we move along today. Okay, so our transition learning path. Like I said, I know our professional development team consistently hears from, especially service coordinators, that transition is a doozy. Lots of timelines to remember, lots of, particulars about your own community, which resources you have or don't have, how to fill out the transition pages of the IFSP, how to keep the requirements and the timelines in line. It's a lot to keep up with. As you guys know too, transition is federally monitored. So I think there's a lot of pressure to make sure it's done right, not only so that we sort of meet the monitoring requirements, but also so that families experience as smooth a transition from early intervention to their next service, to whatever follows EI for them. We want to make sure this is as painless as possible for families. So what we've done is we've put together this learning path. So I'm going to talk to you about what a learning path is, and then we're going to walk through it and think about how to use it for staff development. This one in particular includes 6 resources that are laid out on the path, and when your folks complete all of the activities in when they go through the resources and complete the activities, they will land in a place where they will have professional development hours they can use towards their EI recertification. So before we do that though, I wanted to hear from you guys. Type into chat for me, what do you hear is the biggest challenges around transition from your staff? What are some things you guys are hearing that they say it's either hard for them or they need? Type that into chat for me. What's hard about transition? And again, you can access your chat window by hovering your cursor at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a black toolbar appear. Click on the chat bubble, and then your chat window will pop up. Oh, Christine says, not having any local resources and COVID. Yeah, COVID has changed everything, right? But local resources do vary from community to community, and that can be pretty hard. Emily says, making sure to remember all of the timelines to keep up with. Yeah, even keeping them straight between the 90 days versus 9 months timeline is really hard. Yeah, A. Greer says timelines. Paige says timelines. Agreed! Exclamation point. And let's see, Johanna says figuring out the anticipated date of transition when the family wants time to think. And when they change their minds, yeah, it's we have to have a lot of flexibility there, but we're also working within our regulations. Yeah. Lori says making sure to have a transition planning meeting for all children. That's a great point, not just the children considering Part B services. So it's intricate and it affects all families. It's a great point, Lori. So let's go through the learning path. And as you guys are moving through, I encourage you to think about these things that are most relevant to you and your staff and how you might tap into the learning path to help address some of those specific needs. So learning paths, whoops, let me go back. Learning paths are a curated list of resources that we've put together. Instead of writing like an online module or a course, we've tried to take advantage of resources that are out there, curate that list, organize them for you, and present them to you in a way that you can decide how to use them with your staff. So it hopefully saves you the work of having to just like Google and search for things that you think your staff need. So what you do is you access the path based on the topic that's interesting to your staff. So for today, we have transition. Then you're going to have your staff complete each activity on the path. So those activities might be things like watching a video. They might be completing an online course. Those are typically courses, not ones that we've developed. We're trying to tap into other free resources out there rather than reinvent the wheel. They could be reading an article, using a checklist, and I'll show you some examples. Then, like I said, once they get through the path, you have your quiz and your certificate. Right now, we have 3 learning pathways. We have 2 paths on autism, 5 paths on functional assessment, and then our new one on transition. So before I show you the transition learning path, let's talk about some steps you can use before and after the learning path to get your staff kind of oriented if this is an activity you want to use across time. So obviously step 1 is opening the discussion, right? Just having a discussion with your staff about transition, as you guys probably are now, given that the April 1st deadline is tomorrow. So opening that discussion to just let your staff air out what's going well. You might start talking about, oops, sorry, my cursor is not cooperating. What's going well this year? What are the challenges, which folks often talk a lot about? Why is it challenging, which is the most important question you can ask. What questions do your staff have, especially if they've gone through submitting those referrals at this time of year? What does a successful transition look like? What's your vision in your system for how this should work with families? And then what tools and strategies are they already using, and what tools do they need? So just kind of letting them air that out is a great place to start. After you've got that discussion going, then you can introduce the learning path to your staff. So I'm going to take you to the learning path, show you how to move through it, and then we'll talk about what you can do after the learning path. So let's hope this link works. Here we go. So this is going to take you to our Early Intervention Professional Development Center. Let me move some things around. So I've actually landed on the page, but I'm going to show you how to get here. When you go to our home page, which will just be veip.org, you'll hover on the online learning, come down to learning paths, and that will take you to the page I am here. I'm also going to just drop the link right in chat so you have it directly if you want to click that link and bookmark it. Then you can bookmark it by, if you're using Chrome, you can just click the little star at the top to bookmark. So here you can see our different learning pathways. I'm going to click on the transition pathway. It says learning path number 1, but we actually only have 1 path, so there's not other ones for transition. So as you can see, this is designed to inform any of your staff about practices and requirements for a smooth transition from as children are leaving early intervention. But this is really all about what you do while they're still in EI to get them that smooth transition. So let's get started. So when you visit the learning path page for transition, you're going to have a little bit of an overview. You can see that the total time to complete the path is 4 hours. So this is not something you're going to do in one sitting. Please don't. I designed the path and I wouldn't even want to do this in one sitting. So it takes time. But that's 4 hours towards your certification time. So that's awesome. So let's go through the different activities so you can prepare your staff. So activity 1 is actually completing a module on transition that was developed as part of the early childhood recommended practices modules. They actually have other modules on this site that are really good, so I encourage you to take advantage of them. Your folks will click the link. They'll go to the recommended practices modules website. You can click and check out the other modules as well. But this one, they're going to read. It's a lot of reading, clicking through. I believe there are videos embedded as well. They will move through this at their own pace. I don't believe they don't get a certificate from this website for the module. So their time completing this will be included in the website in the certificate they get for our path. Once they complete that path or that module, they'll come back to the page, complete the next activity. The next activity is an archived webinar from our talks on Tuesdays. They'll click the link here. It's called Getting From Here to There, Navigating Transition from Part C to Part B. So like Lori mentioned, we do want to think about transition big picture because kids do go other places and they absolutely should. They kind of get that big picture in the online course. Here they get a more specific Part C to Part B, a Virginia specific approach. When they click that link, they're going to go to the Talks on Tuesday archive page, scroll down, and they're actually going to complete Part 1 of the 2-part series, because this one provides a really nice overview. You could have your folks complete Part 2 as well, but in the learning path, we just have Part 1 included. Oops, so that one takes about an hour. I'm going to keep going just so you have a kind of an overview here. The activity number 3 is a really nice transition Q&A document that I would encourage, your staff will read through. It was developed by Department of Ed in Virginia and Infant and Toddler Connection of Virginia. It's available on the Virginia Department of Ed website, and then we have it loaded here for the transition path as well. It's a pretty long document. You can probably see it's 22 pages long, so it's a long read. The first couple of pages are glossary terms, which can be really helpful for your new providers and service coordinators. And then you have lots of detailed information, Q&A information that was, again, developed in collaboration with Part B and Part C. So I would encourage them to read it, bookmark it, print it out as a good resource. All right, let's go back. That's the Q&A document. Our next one, activity 4, is we really want to get the word out about this. Watching a 4-part series of transition tutorials. These tutorials, people don't know enough about these, so I want you to get this to your folks. These tutorials were developed, it's 4 short recorded videos developed by Infant and Toddler Connection of Virginia staff, Kyla Patterson and Sarah Moore. These are available on our transition topic page. And so the nice thing about these tutorials is it walks your folks through how to fill out the transition pages of the IFSP, which is super nice. Then you can have your folks, they will review the transition section of the practice manual as another resource to make sure that what they're doing is in line with the requirements. You'll see that the tutorials are not linked up here because I provided some guidance about how to get to them. Because there's 4 of them, I couldn't just link to, I have to show you how to get there. So folks are going to click on the link here to the transition topic page, which is another resource for you guys to know about. You'll click on e-learning. And then you're going to scroll down a little bit. And there they are, the transition tutorials. These are really helpful. They're short, and they provide your folks with the information they need to help families make decisions, develop and document the steps, and then there's some scenarios and information about requirements. They're pretty short, and they're like a PowerPoint, kind of a short PowerPoint video. So really good resources for your staff. Oops, yep, I'm back on the right page. So you'll complete that, have them read through the transition section. And then with any of these, you could have your staff come back to a staff meeting, talk about what they learned, what questions they had. Activities 4 and 5, or 5 and 6 are relatively short. We wanted to make you aware of there's the transition from early intervention to preschool special education practice guide and performance checklist. These are developed by the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center in collaboration with the Division for Early Childhood. This is just nice. It's a 1-page handout. There's actually a video of the guide that's linked here. Kind of has some strategies for your service coordinators and your providers. A little quick scenario, kind of an illustration, and then how do you know when this is working well? So it's a great discussion tool for you guys to use, or just a place for your folks to land to think of, what's this look like when I'm facilitating transition with my families? Similarly, the performance checklist, also by Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. It's an 8-item checklist that could be used for self-assessment. So your folks will learn through the transition learning path, then pause here to reflect on their own practices. You could also use this for supervision. You could use this for peer-to-peer observation, or if you go out and do some observation of your folks, you could fill this out with them to check in on their practices. But in the context of the path, they're included to fill this out themselves. And then the final parting shot for the transition learning path is a short video. This is a video from another state, from Wisconsin. It's still very relevant here in Virginia because your folks will hear from teachers and parents talking about what meaningful inclusion looks like when children transition to preschool. So I know not all of our communities have this perfect inclusive situation in their preschool classrooms, but I thought it was good for your staff to see what it looks like, to hear from families, so that we know what's out there, the potential that's out there, and we can work in our communities to develop that. So it's a short 6-minute video. So those are your 6 activities. Your folks will complete those activities across time, click the quiz button. They'll fill out the quiz, their information, take, I believe it's a 10-question quiz. Once they pass with 80% proficiency, they will be emailed a certificate documenting their 4 hours. So that is a whirlwind tour through the learning path. But let me check in with you guys. Based on what you saw, how can you envision using that with your staff? What are your ideas for having your staff move through the learning path? Type it into chat for me. What are some ideas about how you might be able to use that path with your staff? You could think of things like, how might you use it during your staff meetings? How could you use it if you're still having virtual staff meetings versus in person? And even think beyond staff meetings, what are some other ways you can get this information to your staff? So what do you think? So Johanna says, staff meeting, quick trainings on board. Yeah, onboarding and quick topics for contractor professional development. Yeah, Johanna, you guys as supervisors can dissect the transition learning path and pick the parts that you like the best, or you can spread it over time, like some of those quick topics, quick trainings, Johanna. That's a great idea. Lori says assigning one section at a time with a 2-week deadline. I love that idea. So you kind of put some parameters around it to keep your staff, keep that momentum going. Completed on their own, then coming together at staff meetings and discussed what was learned. That's a fantastic idea. And I like that sort of structure to that. You guys will feel out what works for your staff. Emily says training during our weekly meetings together so we can discuss as a group. Yeah, so Emily, you could have your staff complete the activities maybe before your staff meeting and then come together to discuss, or you can get everybody together and go through that learning module together, to watch the webinar together. You can certainly do this in person, even whether it's virtually or in person, meaning you're sitting in the room together. You can work that out. Yeah, Emily says thumbs up. So there's lots of ways to do that. Some other ideas that I was thinking of, if you even thought, oh, I don't have enough time in my staff meeting to dedicate to an hour webinar, you could think about convening a transition group outside of your staff meetings and maybe having one of your service coordinators or providers help you co-facilitate that. As a supervisor, you don't have to do this all on your own. Just like Lori said, you can give them a deadline to move through the staff, to move through the path and then kind of pull folks together. Another idea is, depending on the size of your staff, you could have staff partnerships. So pair your staff up, have them work as a pair to move through the path, kind of according to how you lay out the timeline. They work through it together, they hold each other accountable, they discuss it, and then pull together as a large group to share insights. Johanna says, great idea of having a service coordinator co-facilitate. Yeah, nice way to build their leadership skills. And, we do have service coordinators in our system who are really passionate about transition, who really want this to go well with families. So tap into the resources on your staff to help make that happen. So you guys have some really good ideas for how to use this. Now I'm going to show you a couple more steps for once your folks are through the learning path, then what? Because the best professional development happens across time and across multiple opportunities for folks to learn and reflect. So let's see a few more resources. So you can continue the learning by using one of our learning bites. So learning bites are staff meeting activities that have all the information you're going to need to use that with your staff. So I'm going to click the link here and I'll show you this learning bite. So you have another resource in your back pocket. I'll show you how to get there. So the learning bites, similar way, you're going to go to the home page. This time you're going to hover on EI topics and tools, click on learning bites, the page, and this will take you to, these are where the learning paths are kind of a curated list of activities. These are one staff meeting activity based on a topic that's relevant to your folks. You can see our most recent one we wrote was on cultural humility, but we have lots of different tabs with lots of different topics. The transition, we only have one transition learning bite, so I think I need to up my game on writing learning bites so I can add some more on transition. But I'm going to scroll down and I'll show you this learning bite. So here we go. This one, let me move some things around on my screen, shooting the transition hoop. So you can see here, when you click that link, you will have a downloadable PDF. This one's called Shooting the Transition Hoop. Yeah, okay, up your game while shooting the transition hoop. Oh, Corey, yeah, I did make a pretty sad pun there. Sorry about that, guys. It has your purpose of your activity. So this one really helps you help your learners review key things. So maybe key things that you're teaching them, key things they got from the learning path. You could do this activity maybe 2 weeks after you finish the learning path or a month later just to touch base with them. I'm not going to go through all the steps here, but just know that all the steps are laid out for you. I'll give you a quick kind of an overview. This one involves dividing your folks into teams, and then you kind of play a game with points to review the content. I'm going to scroll down. You have some links to additional resources that show, here again, we're highlighting the transition tutorials. And then you have everything you need for the handout. So this is your transition review handout. In your directions, you'll see you're actually going to print this out and cut these into strips and use it like a game. You answer the question, whichever team gets the right answer, they're going to throw it into a basket and they get a point. So that's the cheesy transition hoop thing. But it's got all the resource, all the questions you need. You don't have to come up with those for your staff. That's already been developed. So this is just an example of a learning bite, but these are all free. They're all here for you. And then finally, one more step in this, complete your learning bite. And then maybe let's go longer term, 3 months down the path, you could go back to that checklist that I showed you before. Have your folks revisit the checklist. Again, they could do the peer-to-peer observation or just their own reflection. You guys could do it as a group with your, in staff meeting, kind of look at the whole program's approach and how you guys are doing and see where there's maybe been growth or where there are still things to keep working on. So you're kind of revisiting the checklist that your folks did during the learning path. So, so that's just a couple of ideas for you to think about how you can take transition, address needs that your staff have, and do that across time. We would love to have any feedback that you're, as you're using the learning path, the learning bite, any of those resources. Absolutely send me feedback because I'm always interested in how this is working for your staff or how it's not working. I'll tell you, I did hear from a system manager. I don't believe Adele is on this morning, but that she found an issue in the module. That's the first step in the activity in the transition learning path. So if you guys stumble across things like that, I can't necessarily fix that, but I can let the developers know, and we can all work together to try to make this work well. So let me know what your staff's saying. Let me know how it goes when you use it, because your feedback helps me make the learning path better, and it certainly helps our professional development team be responsive to what your staff needs. So before we wrap up, I see we've got a couple more minutes. Any questions in chat? I'm certainly happy to hang out. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I wish you guys all the best with your staff as you support them through transition. We know this is a big time of year for that kind of thing. So any questions you guys have, feel free to drop them in chat, or we have a small group. You're welcome to unmute your mic and ask, just ask that way too. So thanks, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day.